All right, welcome to the Sanders Report. So it's the day after the election, and the left is having a complete meltdown. And in all fairness, if the election had gone the other way, I would say there'd probably be people on the right having meltdowns too. It probably just wouldn't be as pathetic or embarrassing. You've got people crying, having anxiety attacks. People need safe places. I saw there were people on the news last night talking about churches opening up to allow people to come in to find a safe space in case they just needed to get away from, the aggression and how upset they were getting from all the election coverage. And that just shows you how weak our society is getting. And I know this is nothing new, but it's just, this is really where we're at. Adults, these are adults and they can't handle it. I explain things to my son. It's like, hey, look, yes, everyone has emotions. Emotions are real, but you have to control your emotions. You cannot let your emotions control you. That's something that you need to figure out as a child. But kids aren't learning this, I guess. And now we have a country full of a bunch of grown up children. And it's embarrassing. And it comes when you see it says Georgetown University was offering self care suites. Self care suites to students that were feeling overwhelmed by the election and they needed somewhere to go and fill out coloring books and eat cookies. Isn't that nice? They can go color pictures and eat cookies. And that's why you see the problem we have in the labor force today, because young people don't want, if it's something that upsets them or they don't like, they just want to shut down. And it's ruined our country. I mean, we can't even have discourse with each other anymore because people get upset. And if you start saying things that they don't like, they don't want to engage with you anymore. They want to cancel you. They want to shut you down. And that's the problem. And it's being fed by the mainstream media. The United States is probably the most propagandized country in the world. Yes, I know there's authoritarian regimes. I'm sure there's propaganda in Russia and China and everywhere else. But if you don't think that just about everything that you're consuming, from your music to your news, everything, and that's why it's important to, try to look at all sources, because there might be kernels of truth here and there might be kernels of truth there, but you need to take all that media in and make your own decisions. But I can tell you one place that you probably should not be getting any of your media from, and that's Joe Scarborough. This is the guy that does the show on MSNBC called Morning Joe. This guy's a nutball. On MSNBC's coverage after Trump pretty much had the election wrapped up, Joe Scarborough just starts spewing out lie after lie after lie. Like something that I pointed out here, he talked about the Liz Cheney comment last week. He says Donald Trump said he wants her put in front of a firing squad. That's not what Donald Trump said. Donald Trump said that she should pick up a rifle and go fight for herself if she wants to advocate for all of these wars and intervention. That's nothing new. That's pretty straight up good rhetoric to say that somebody that wants to advocate for war should fight it themselves. Maybe politicians would think twice before sending all of our Marines and soldiers and sailors overseas to go fight and kill and be killed in the name of military industrial complex. And if you don't know, Joe Scarborough is married to Mika Brzezinski. And her father, Zygmunt Brzezinski, is the guy that's responsible for radicalizing a lot of the Taliban in Afghanistan, because when we were trying to use the Mujahideen to fight the Russians in the 80s, her father is one of the guys that was over there basically organizing and putting that together, that proxy war that we fought against Russia. So that's who she is, and she's married to Joe Scarborough, and together they're some of the biggest propagandists on television. And then Joe Scarborough went on to repeat some other things. He said that Trump called for one of his generals to be put to death. That's not what he said. He said that in the past, that's the way treason was handled. And he was saying that you could make the case that his actions were treasonous. He didn't say he should be put to death. He was just saying, look at this. He was like, this is the kind of behavior that this is what they used to do. He's not saying, he didn't call for him to be put to death. He was making the point of how outrageous it was for that guy to be doing the things that he was doing. And again, and Joe, you can look it up. There's a clip. Jimmy Dore did a great bit on this. That's where I saw the segment. I probably would have never seen it, but Jimmy Dore, who's a pretty progressive liberal, he does a great podcast, and he's got a ton of YouTube clips up. I love that guy. I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff. I agree with him on a lot, but I also disagree with him on a lot. I'd say we're good at identifying the same problems, but when it comes to solutions, we're kind of on opposite ends, and that's fine. But I respect the fact that he's willing to, he'll engage people that he disagree with. He doesn't want to silence them. So if any of y'all are interested, I would definitely recommend checking out Jimmy Dore. But so Joe Scarborough, then after he goes on to say all these lies, he talks about Americans not being familiar with civics or understanding government. And he goes on to talk about how ignorant people are and says that they're unaware of Madisonian democracy. And what I think he's talking about is the Madisonian model, which was used to structure our government, dividing the government up into three branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And, yes, separation of powers are good. That's exactly what we're supposed to have. But the fact that he says Madisonian democracy, to me, makes me wonder if Joe Scarborough took a civics class, because the United States is not a democracy. And I know probably a lot of you are going to say, well, that's not true. We're definitely a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. That's what we've always been. There are democratic principles that go into it, like electing your representatives. You elect your representatives through a vote, and then they go represent you in the republic, and the republic is bound and restricted by the limits placed on it by the Constitution. That's the way this government works. That's the way it's supposed to work. It doesn't work like that any longer, and that's because a lot of people have no respect for the Constitution. They just want to, bastardize it and say it's a relic and say it's not applicable today, but that's why we're at where we're at, because of lack of respect for the Constitution and what is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. Another show that is in complete free fall, and again, I don't watch it, but it was one of the main headlines on the Drudge Report today, which, Drudge Report I used to think was a really good news aggregate site, and really the last probably 6 years or so, it's become so anti-Donald Trump. And not that I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I would, I will argue against a lot of his policies, and once he gets back into his second term, I will hold him accountable. I will be critical of anything that he does that I disagree with. I'm not gonna defend him. I was very critical of him during his first term. But Drudge used to be pretty balanced. He was pretty good about pointing out the authoritarianism on the left and the right. But some of his headlines, especially this past week, really amping up some of the anti-Trump, like violent rhetoric stuff. It was kind of disenfranchising a little bit. But anyway, one of the top headlines was it took you to this article, and it broke down the transcript from the show The View today. And if you don't know what The View is, it's one of these daytime shows. It's got a bunch of entitled women on there that are very opinionated, and their opinions are backed by their feelings and emotions instead of facts. I think it's Joy Behar, Whoopi Goldberg, and some other ladies. Regardless, they're on there just saying all the typical stuff. Oh, this is so terrible. They're saying everybody that voted for Donald Trump, this wasn't about policy. It was only about being racist and misogynist and all these other things. I can tell you right now, I voted for Trump strictly on policy, and primarily his energy policies to push for deregulation, to push for energy exploration, and to basically try to make America energy independent. I've pointed out the problems with Trump's tariff policy. I've pointed out the problems with calling for a lot of his tax cuts if we're not going to have the spending cuts. Now, the counter argument to my criticism of his tax cuts are Elon's going to come in and identify a bunch of inefficiencies and cut government spending. Well, I'll believe that when I see it. My problem with Harris's policies are they were very pro green energy, which is, I feel, it doesn't benefit our energy. It actually will make our energy more expensive, less reliable, like pushing to get off of fossil fuels and onto solar and wind, which are less reliable sources of energy. That's not good for us. That equals less reliable, more expensive energy. And that's not good, especially if we're trying to, rebuild our production base. Like we need cheap energy for that. I mean, gosh, we need cheap energy just to heat our homes. We need cheap energy for travel. We need cheap energy for everything. So we need to be pursuing all avenues to get that. So it's basically energy policy. Also, she talked about um, price caps. Like basically like being able to cap what people can charge for things. Like that's going to cause one of the most important things in a market economy, a free market economy, is the price mechanism. The price mechanism is one of the ways that the economy can regulate itself, because the price mechanism is what sends the signals to people how much should be produced, what should be produced, what the right price is for that. And if you artificially want to cap that, but it costs more to produce it, and then you remove the profit incentive and you don't allow that to exist, well, you're going to start having shortages, because if I'm going to buy a product and you're going to cap me on what I can charge for it, now you're removing my incentive to actually, maybe have that in my inventory or keep that on hand. Now I'm not maybe going to keep those things in the warehouse, because unless I know for sure I'm going to sell it, it's just going to be a liability for me. And because I know that you might step in and start regulating here and there and picking my business apart, it's not really conducive for your industry. So that's just a few of the things. Like there's other stuff, about her policies that aren't good. And I mean, if you go back to some of the things that she did while she was in California, the district attorney, she was pretty authoritarian there. She was not very lenient on criminals. She went after one mother for truancy. The kid was missing school. The kid had sickle cell. So she's not this person that was really promoted by the media the way they put her out. But so these women on The View are saying that anybody that voted for Trump, it wasn't about policy. And then they turn around and they're making statements saying that they were doing everything they could to ensure that the first female African American, Asian American woman was elected to office. Who cares? Who cares if she's a woman? Who cares if it's a man? Who cares if she's black, white, brown, blue? Who cares? All we should be concerned with is who is the best candidate. And I can tell you right now, the fact that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris were the primary, don't get me wrong, there was Chase Oliver and Jill, you had some other options, but not really. It was basically going to be either Harris or Trump. The fact that Harris and Trump were your two main candidates, that tells you where we're at as a country. Like, come on now. We can do better than that. We should do better than that. So I'm hoping we can get ahead of the next election, and hopefully the Libertarian Party or somebody else, it could be an independent, they don't even have to be associated with a party, but let's just hope that somebody else emerges as a candidate for 2028, and we can get somebody that's a real advocate for individual liberty, a real advocate for free markets. This is the kind of candidate that I think we need to return our country to what it once was. Yes, make America great again. Unfortunately, I don't think Trump's going to do that. But between Harris and Trump, I went with Trump. Trump was the lesser of two evils in this case. no matter what the mainstream media wants you to think. And one last thing that was mentioned on The View, which is concerning and should be concerning to anybody, is that they were talking about wondering why the third section of the 14th Amendment wasn't applied to not allow Donald Trump to win the election. And what part 3 of the 14th Amendment says is that anybody that was involved in a insurrection cannot basically be elected to office. Well, first of all, January 6th, again, despite what you've been told by the mainstream media, was not an insurrection. An insurrection is a violent uprising against authority or government, and that is not what that was. Was there violence that day? Yes, there were some isolated violent acts. Was it an orchestrated attack where everybody came and they thought they were going to violently overthrow the government? No, it doesn't even make sense. You had a bunch of Second Amendment rights gun advocates that thought they were going to overthrow the government, so they didn't bring their guns with them. And you'll hear on the media, they're they had weapons. I saw a thing that said somebody had bear spray and like some other goofy stuff, and it's like, this is not what you, if you were going to start an insurrection, this is not what you would be bringing to the table. Okay. And there might have been a few handguns that were taken, but it's not like everybody was there with their rifles marching into DC, ready to have a shootout and try to overthrow the government. That's not what happened that day. And you can go back to the footage and you can see where the cops are opening the doors and letting the people in. And yes, there was definitely a handful, maybe several handfuls of people there that were probably out of control and being idiots, people that were breaking the windows and, any type of property damage, that's stupid. You don't do that. And that one girl was going through the window. She got shot and killed. The Capitol Police killed that woman. So that's what happens. When you act stupid, you win stupid, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. And that's what happened. So anyway, that was not an insurrection, but they're trying very hard to make everyone believe that was an insurrection. And, if this was just some women on The View talking about that, like using the 14th Amendment to prevent Trump from taking office, it wouldn't be as concerning as the fact that Congressman Jamie Raskin, I think he's from Maryland, he's the Maryland representative, Jamie Raskin was on tape not long ago saying that they need to use the 14th Amendment to justify not certifying the election on January 6th. Yeah, I think it's January 6th next year, either January 5th or January 6th. He says, on this day when we're supposed to certify the election, we're just not going to do it. And he talks about needing the military in place, kind of like you've heard the last few weeks. They've been drumming up Trump using martial law. Well, here you have the Democrats saying maybe we should just not certify this election and be ready to implement martial law when people want to go out and protest or act out against the government. So there you see it. The Democrats doing all the stuff that they've been saying they're worried about Trump doing. They're worried about Trump weaponizing the justice system, kind of like they did against Trump in New York. They keep making a big deal about him being a felon. It was a misdemeanor business law that he broke in New York that they trumped up and tied it into elections and made it a felony. It wasn't even a felony charge. And it was payments. They took the same payment, and each payment was like 3 separate charges. And then so 11 total payments, that was 33 charges. And then there was another charge, I think, for the overall statute that they charged them with. But that's how they ended up with the 34 felonies. If you actually go look at what the charges were, it was multiple the same charges over and over and over again, and it was just because of multiple payments. Whatever. I'm not saying that that's right that Trump did that. I'm just saying that doesn't seem like a non-disclosure agreement. That doesn't seem like something that should be a big deal. I don't know. Again, I'm critical of Trump more for his his deficit, he increased the deficit, and that was my biggest thing. And him attacking Jerome Powell when Powell was trying to raise interest rates, which should have been done a long time ago, and gave us the inflation that we have. So there are policies that I'm critical of Trump on, and I will, and hopefully Trump, if Trump doesn't drop support for Ukraine, and if Trump amps up support for Israel, I'll be critical of that. You know, we got to start taking care of us, and we got to stop all these wars. So that's it. I just wanted to make a quick video about that because it's pretty comical. And again, regardless of how you feel about it, you know, left or right, you got to stay peaceful. Okay, if the Democrats do something stupid on January 6th and they invoke the 14th Amendment and don't certify the election, I'm not telling you not to protest. I'm not telling you not to, you know, voice your opinion. But what I am saying is be peaceful. Do not be stupid. Pay attention to what's going on. If you're at a protest and you start seeing people that are acting up, get out your cameras, videotape them. You know, get these people, if they're wearing masks, you know, be like, hey, is this guy COINTELPRO? Is this guy an agent provocateur for the government trying to start some stuff? Because that's not what we need to do. And if you were a Harris supporter and you're upset about Trump winning, don't go out and do anything stupid either. You know what I mean? Because that's what the government's trying to do. They want you to go out and do something so they can amp it up, create the problem so they can try to step in with the solution. But with that said, thank you all for listening. Have a good day.